Howdy doody, everybody. If this is your first visit to Lorena's Labyrinth, welcome. I'm Anna Pirelli, and if you're a returning viewer and part of the community that is obviously in its early days and hopefully growing, I'll put it out there to the universe. Thank you very much for joining me again today. So today we're going to have a look at, with this video, uh, a conversation basically around centering and grounding, what it looks like, who should be doing it, and when are the best times to practice activities. And this includes ones that are actually very brief that we can do when we're in a rush. So I hope that you enjoy the video and potentially learn something. If you have got information or strategy yourself and you'd like to leave it in the comments, very much welcome, very much appreciated. I'm sure if there will be many people besides myself that looks forward to hearing what you've got to say. Um, the more we learn about people's experiences, the more we grow and develop ourselves. So anyway, carrying on, let's move on. So, from a mainstream perspective, and when I say mainstream, I mean within my work as a social worker or in the fields of mental health, when we talk about centering and grounding, we actually mean focusing our attention, calming ourselves, balancing our moods and emotions, and even being able to measure and manage our responsibilities and our capacity to achieve our dreams and goals. And we can also assess our own progress and responsibilities, or our progress towards our goals, when we are centered and grounded. So, centering and grounding activities are things that we can do quite easily each day, and we can do it multiple times a day. We don't need to be in a crisis to do them. And more often than not, I guess we think of centering and grounding in association with energy workers or spiritual workers, but it's something that all of us can do. And in fact, I would say that we would all be wise to do it, because when we're centered and grounded, it's so much easier to retain the inner peace, harmony, and equilibrium. So, as I just said, really everybody should be centering and grounding on a regular basis. We would all benefit from it. People that work within energy or human service fields probably should pay more attention to it. And I would advise that they try and do that quick center and ground in between clients where possible, because this will assist them to remain person centered and focused on each client without the distraction of thinking about other things, which is actually not very polite. If you're talking to somebody and you're thinking, and we've all done it. I'll put my hand up as well and say I've done it in the past as well, where you're talking to somebody and you're doing the motions, the nodding, thank you, yes, feeding back, while at the same time thinking, oh my God, on the way home, I must remember to stop and pick up such and such for dinner because I've got to feed the kids, stuff like this. But when we're centered and grounded, it's far easier to focus on the situation in hand. And that old saying that you see everywhere, remain present in the here and now, that's what centering and grounding helps you to do, to be present in each moment and fully engaged with what's happening with you there and then in the moment. So, centering and grounding also helps to support a good work life balance, and not just balance in that regard, because if we can have a good work life balance, then we can also have a good emotional and psychological balance as well. All work, no play makes Johnny a dull boy, as the saying goes. Well, more to the point, if a person is all work and no play, it lends them to have a total imbalance within their relationships. That's with family, friends, and can ultimately lead to less pleasure and joy in life. Now, I'm aware that there are some people who work because their work is something that they're very passionate about. They may be working towards a cause or something like that, and it just gives them pure pleasure. So they could be a bit addicted to work. Now, they're a separate species, so to say. There's very few that are actually blessed enough to have a job that they are completely passionate about. But at the same time, even if work is their love and their passion, they will still need to allow themselves time to rebalance and recharge as part of their self care. And they can do this with centering and grounding. And this is so that they don't achieve burnout. Because it's very easy if you're passionate about something to just keep working and working at it, and to put off things like, eating well or just physical exercise or whatever. So even somebody who has got that work-based passion can benefit from doing centering and grounding. Now, activities and strategies for centering and grounding, they don't need to be time consuming. Once we've actually worked out how to do it for ourselves, and it usually is a matter of trying out different strategies to find the one that is easiest for us to do individually and what feels right. But once we've learned how to do it, we can do it very, very quickly and very discreetly in all situations. It just takes a little longer at the beginning. So, of course, naturally, I'm going to speak to my own experiences within this particular slide. So, when should we do the centering and grounding, and why would we do it? Well, I believe it should be done at least daily and probably in the morning before you start your work day or at the end of the day before you go to bed. But I'll use a prime example of when I was a working mum and I had children and how I used to manage it to keep my own, if you like, sense of self centered, grounded, and focused and present in the moment. So at the time that I learned these strategies, I was working in an accounts department. It was quite intense, and in fact, it had huge responsibilities attached to it, but it was also quite psychologically draining and exhausting, as most people that have worked in accounts areas would know. So what I used to do was, before my day started, I would do a centering and grounding, just a quick one, grab the kids, drop them off at school. Just in the car before I walked in, I would do a simple breathing exercise. It was the tree one. So I'm going to show you the tree one later on, tree and light. But anyway, I would do a quick exercise in the car, about 3 minutes worth, and then I would head in for the day. And then I was able to purposefully focus on my task and be 100% in the moment. Now, sometimes throughout the day, because the work was actually brain strain, I would find that my brain would become clogged. You know, you reach that stage where it's almost, glazed with your eyes because you've been looking at numbers for so long. So, what I would do in those instances is I would get out of my chair and I would take a break and I would step outside, just a 5 minute break, because we're allowed to have them in Australia. I don't know if you can do it where you are. Now, depending on how clogged my brain was how long I would take to do a few different strategies, which we'll talk to that in a minute. But in many ways, what it was like was, I'm a bit graphic. It's a bit like a dog that was getting up and having a stretch, bit of a walk and a sniff, and then get back to business. So when I took these breaks, I was essentially simply maintaining my aura, and I found it extremely beneficial in many ways, especially at the end of the day, because I would recenter in the car before picking up my children from school. And that way I was able to meet them. I was not feeling drained and fatigued. I was able to let go of the work situation before they actually got in the car. And that meant that when I was with my children, I was able to focus on being a mother and a parent. So sometimes we do the centering and grounding to manage our own personal energy, and other times we do it for maintenance of our energy fields. So, just to reiterate, at the end of the day is a really good time to do it before we go to bed in the evenings, because it helps to sort of clear and declutter the mind so that you can have a good night's sleep. So before I speak about this slide, just in regard to the previous slide, do feel free. I invite you to leave a comment and let us know when and how often you do centering and grounding activities, and if there's a specific routine that you apply to them, because I'm sure other people will definitely be interested. And I also enjoy looking at and reading new things and how people do things, you know. But anyway, so when might a person do these activities? Once again, add your own contributions here. I welcome them. People experiencing emotional dysregulation or heightened mood swings, or who are suffering from extreme stress, or basically just going through those rapid changes in moods, they can benefit from doing this activity because it helps to balance and bring them back into equilibrium. So, when would you do it? Look, if you're a person that has got those rapid mood changes, definitely when you can feel your anxiety or depressive symptoms on the rise, because you could, through centering and grounding, prevent it escalating into something much worse. And if you think about this, the centering and grounding activities actually bring in with them the breathing or the exercise of breathing. So these centering and grounding activities are really good for stabilizing your emotional state, particularly helpful for people with trauma conditions. Now, I just mentioned the word breathwork in the previous slide, so just a quick revisitation of that. Breathwork is central to all spiritual and mindful activities. Now, do remember, I do have a video on box breathing that's in one of the playlists on the channel. And so, just a reminder, go there and have a look if you need a bit of extra help. But I will, for the purposes of this video, say it is a case of deeply inhaling to the count of 4, holding the inward breath to the count of 4, exhaling to the count of 4, and then holding the empty lung space to the count of 4, and a repetition of the breath cycle for about 4 to 6. Now, this is not a strict, you've got to do it this way. This is an example, right? So there are many ways beyond the breathing, there are many ways that people can bring this breathing activity into centering and grounding activities. Um, and I do recommend that, because there are so many different ways, that people try different ones to find out what works for them, what's comfortable, what they can do easily, and where and how it feels right to them, because it's the feeling that is the most important thing. Life is not one size fits all, and neither are centering and grounding techniques. And this is one of the reasons why I say, if you've got a strategy, pop it on the wall, let people know, because somebody may benefit from it. Anyway, so what I used to do, one of the things that I found when we speak about one size not fitting all, it's the same with not every strategy fits the environment that we're in at the time. And so going back to my account days when I was working, I definitely was not comfortable doing a meditation in the workplace for centering and grounding. This was many years ago. And obviously, I was very concerned about what my colleagues might think of me if I was out there, breathing and doing a ooh doo 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 thing. So I tried to be very discreet at work when I was doing my centering and grounding. Um, so one of the things that I did, just let me have a look at this because I've got a number of them I want to talk to. Right. So, in the first instance, at this particular job, there was a central courtyard which wasn't particularly private, but it did allow me an escape with a garden thing, if you like. So, when my mind became very cluttered, what I would do is I would get up and have a look at flowers and rose bushes, because if you can get in there and touch the roses, the trees, or the branches, then you're still able to do grounding in discrete ways. I'll show you the next slide. So what I'm getting to when I was talking about the flowers and the roses, right, if you watch this little video here, you can see how you can discreetly, if you've got a rose bush that's in bloom, which it's not always the case, but you can take time out, go to a rose bush, give it a great big sniff discreetly. Anybody walking past is thinking that you're just appreciating the beauty and the perfume of the flowers, which of course you are, but you're also doing more than that. You're doing a centering and grounding activity. So, as I say, not every workplace is going to have a rose bush, but I do believe that you're capable of establishing the point I'm trying to convey here, which is adapt it to your environment. So another one that's really simple and discreet is actually just casually walking up to a tree and leaning against it, popping your hand on it, um, looking at the leaves, inspecting the leaves, or focusing on the insects on the trees as well. It's all discreet, and we can be getting reconnecting with nature at the same time. I also find including gratitude, if I'm out there in nature looking at the trees, bringing that in, what a beautiful tree, look at the amazing bark on this tree. Um, could this be an accident of nature, as some people would have us be, or is this part of a divine design? It's just perfect. And then when you look in the little hollows, so I'm able to do different things like that. And you might benefit from it as well. It might be something you already do. Sometimes, of course, it's as simple as just kicking your shoes off and walking barefoot through the grass. This, of course, isn't always practical. And actually, there's probably a few health implications these days, depending on where you live. But anyway, this is just something else. But it's very good to do it when you're on the hop with limited time. Just quickly kick your shoes off and ground those feet into the beautiful lawn, as long as it's not full of double G's as well. So most people working in what we call the healing or energy modalities are aware that when we center, we're actually aligning um, the chakras, which you see here in this image, the primary chakras that run in a straight line down the center of the spine. Now, when a chakra or any of the chakras is out of alignment, we call that as the chakra system is being out of alignment. So, a person that's energy aware can actually feel when they're not aligned, for want of a better word. You can feel when they're not in the right space. So, for instance, they might feel a pull of energy because you can feel energy in many ways. By all means, leave a comment. Some people feel it as warmth. Some people feel it as a bit of pins and needly type stuff. It's a little difficult to explain, but a warm fuzzy. But anyway, somebody who's energy aware can feel a pull of energy with the warmth or the tingling in a certain part of the body. Now, an example of this is many years ago, because we're all learning all the time, and you may have had a similar experience. But what I did was I'd been doing some chakra balancing actually, and more to the point, I was doing chakra development. I was still learning, and what I did was I focused my energy on developing my crown chakra first, and I was working my way from the top to the bottom because I thought that would actually be the best way of doing it. But what I didn't take into account was that as a mother, there was going to be a distraction and an interruption, and I wouldn't actually complete the balance. So I was going about my stuff, if you like, and I started to feel dizzy and giddy, and I could feel energy. And I just felt, for want of a better description, completely out of whack. I had a major energy imbalance, and this is why I recommend. I learned afterwards, I spoke to a teacher, and they said they actually laughed. It was a bit of a joke. It was like, no, no, you never start at the top. You start at the base and you work your way up. It's like building a house, I guess. You don't put the roof on the house until you've put the foundations in place. And this is the same with the chakra system. If you're going to develop and grow it, start at the base, work your way up. So back to the image here. What I wanted to put into or put to use is that when we look at this particular image, the colors actually are not quite right, but you see that the yellow chakra is in the center of the body. It might be the third from the bottom, but it is like a central chakra. Now, this chakra is also referred to as a power chakra. It governs personal power. Yourself, because it relates to, let me, stumbling over my words, don't mind me. It's because that's where our confidence sits. So if we're feeling confident and strong within ourselves, then we're going to be a powerful person. It's associated with our faith, our hope, and our trust. Now, I just want to check that I've covered all that I need to cover here. I was actually going to mention, I remember now, what I want to talk about with this particular image is another reason why it doesn't do justice to the chakra system is because actually they're not the same size. They're not all the same size like what this particular image shows you. It shows you the pink is the same size as the yellow. That's not correct. The yellow chakra is probably about the size of a dinner plate, and the red chakra at the bottom is actually one of the smaller ones, but gee, it has a lot of power in it, really, because that refers to our base, if you like. I think the yellow is the largest. The chakra, if we were talking, if you know your crockery sizes, the yellow chakra is about the size of a dinner plate, and the green chakra, which actually is green and pink, so that's another injustice with this particular image, is about the size of an entree plate. Probably the orange, I'm just sort of looking at this, the orange is probably the size of a bread and butter plate. Um, Purple is probably about the size of a cup and saucer. And anyway, yes, so the throat and the red chakras are a little smaller. So, having said that, they work like the wheels. I've got other videos on it anyway. Go and take a look at those, and you'll be able to see the chakra function. Um, but anyway, moving on to the next slide. Now, I'm going to read through this next bit because I don't want to miss anything, and I think a lot of the content here is actually really important. So, this is part of me not missing content, okay? So, From the perspective of the energy worker, centering and grounding is part of a purification ritual before clients. And this is why many people working in the healing modalities state that they also receive the benefit of healing when they're doing a healing session, because they're drawing the universal energy into their own being, their body, their entirety. They're channeling it. They bring it in and they send it outwards. Now, my colleague and I, we've really struggled to create the perfect images here to help you visualize what this process looks like. But anyway, we're kind of stuck with what we've got. So I'm going to have to talk you through it. So basically, what would happen is that you are the person, you visualize yourself standing here in a pillar of brilliant white light. Now, this color white, of course, if you don't know, it carries all the other colors of the rainbow in it. So for many people, it's also called a rainbow light. When they talk about pure white, there is no such thing as pure white, really, because, as I say, white has all the colours in it. It's just, it's not so obvious. But anyway, when we visualize ourselves standing in this pillar of light, the pillar of light should extend at least 1.5 meters outside, preferably 3 meters from our sides, from the front and the back, above and below. And we're purifying our entire aura when we do this. This means that we're removing any dross or any of the heavy energy from our personal space. And that's what leaves us feeling lighter and brighter. Plus, it kickstarts our energy fields for the next client. So we can say it's a purification strategy. So after spending many hours trying to create the perfect visual for you, me and my colleague, we just gave up on doing the perfect image. And I said, look, I'm going to speak to the slides, the images, as opposed to creating the image, which probably isn't a bad thing because we've all got our own visualization and imagery anyway. So when I'm trying to describe a strategy here, that's one that I use very often, and I use it within clients, when I was doing the social work, and definitely I use it within, in between clients when I'm doing psychic or energy work. So in this one, basically, it's a case of, as I say, remember, these images don't do it justice. Kick your shoes off, stand upright and barefoot, if you can. Otherwise, visualize yourself doing it if you've got mobility issues. Plant your feet comfortably apart on the ground, not together like what you see in this image. Then extend your arms upward above your head in a type of V shape. Um, I think you can work that out. And your palms up. Now, in this position, you're getting ready to absorb the divine and universal, excuse me, coughing, purifying energy into your body. Now, when you inhale, you imagine this white light coming through the top of your crown, through your palms of your hands, and into your body. And as you're breathing in, because it's a good deep breath, remember we're talking about the breathing exercise before, you breathe this beautiful white light coming through your body. Then on the exhale, you bend at the waist and you point your hands to the ground. You don't need to touch your toes unless you can and unless you want to. Most people aren't that fit. I certainly am not. But bend at the waist. And then on the exhale, you breathe this beautiful white light that you've brought into yourself through to the core and the center of the earth. So you visualize it coming out of your feet as two pillars of light, and a stream of light coming out of each palm and your crown, and you're basically just pushing on the exhale the white light into the earth core. Now, once you've let that exhale out, remember when you're doing your breathing strategy, you hold the empty space and then you do a big inhale again. And as you do that inhale, because remember you're bent over, you breathe this golden light from the core of the earth up through your feet, through your hands, through your crown, up through your body, and you're standing up as you're breathing in, and then you extend your arms above your head, ready to do the exhale. Now, when you exhale that beautiful golden, it's like a molten gold color. You blow that out, if you like, breathe that out up into the universe above you. Hold the empty space. Then, once again, you repeat the exercise. On the inhale, you bring the white light in all the way down through your body, and then you bend after you've done the holding. Just practice it a few times, you'll get the drift. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And you only have to do that. I think the benefit of this particular exercise is actually if you can get up and stand up, it's physical as well as visual. And it's very, very quick. Usually you can knock it over within, once you've got it down pat. I mean, if you're talking about a repetition of 4 breaths and a count of four, what's that, 16? You can knock it over in about 2 minutes with ease. So, yes, I recommend this strategy. Leave your comments. I'm really interested to hear your feedback. So, I've just loaded these images up so that you can take a look at it. It's just a different way of viewing, and it might convey to you, just I'll just waffle for a second so that you can actually take in these images, which none of them really do justice to the process that I've just described, but hopefully you can work it out. Anyway, leave a comment. And just for some food for thought here before I move on, um, environment plays a really big part. I'll just come back to that, on how comfortable a person is to do a specific centering and grounding activity. People living in shared accommodation may not feel comfortable doing these kind of activities, especially outside. They can do it in their bedroom, just use their imagination. So some people like to use essential oils in an air vaporizer or to roll it on skin contact, right? As for myself, I love to use a vaporizer, and I love to do blends with the sandalwood, lavender, frankincense, myrrh, that kind of thing. These are very good centering and grounding essential oils. That, in fact, may be a very good video in itself, just a video on aromatherapy. But just a tidbit here, if you're planning to apply essential oils to your skin, do check the safety precautions first. Do a skin patch. Some oils are phototoxic, and what that means is they react to the sun. While it's usually the citrus oils, just make sure that you're using essential oils safely. And there's plenty of content on Google, but my more recent search showed me that there's a lot of information that's not necessarily reputable. In my experience looking at things like aromatherapy colleges, they tend to list out the health risks far better than some of these less reputable websites. At the moment, my favourite oil that I'm absolutely loving is frankincense. Oh my God. I do, however, I do feel honest, or I do feel guilty, to be honest. I try not to abuse it because I actually know that frankincense is, not, if it's not an endangered species, it's certainly in short supply. And I think it would be remiss of me not to say to people, look, if you're going to use essential oils and crystals, do try and consider things such as sustainability. I don't think anybody really wants to see trees chopped down, especially if they're endangered. So just do your homework. If you know of some good blends, please also, let us know. As before, we're all interested. So when it comes to crystals and centering and grounding, I could go to town on this as well and run a whole video of different crystals. Now, this one here, I did think smoky citrine probably would be a good one to put up because I actually love smoky citrine. And when I go and do a Google online and I look at what people are selling, some of it is really dodgy stuff. So this is why I think it's important to put photos up. Just for the record, I used to sell crystals many years ago. So I don't have all the knowledge that I used to have. I think I've probably forgotten a lot over time, but I also do remember a lot. So, smoky citrine is a wonderful crystal. It also brings abundance in. Um, I do consider crystals to be a bit of a band aid approach to centering and grounding, but they are good to have at different times. I'll speak to what I've used in the workplace. Oh, actually, I'll speak to it now. Okay, because I've worked with clients that have had so many horrible situations. I was actually trying to put boundaries on my aura because I would absorb empathetically or whatever. I'd become caught up in people's stories of pain and suffering. So I used to wear Tibetan Tektite for that. Other things that I do is I wear black tourmaline bracelets, one on either hand. Now, I'm not really interested in whether or not people believe that these are effective for grounding. They certainly, if nothing else, I actually do believe they've got healing properties. But when I first started using them, I used to think I don't care if it's psychosomatic, if it's just a mental reminder to me that I need to watch my boundaries. So I will use black tourmaline. Black obsidian's a whole different story. I will wear that too. But yeah, I'll do a video on crystals at some point in time. But anyway, I got sidetracked as I do when I was looking for crystals, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give you a tip here about crystals. All right, because when I spoke about sustainability before for essential oils, there's also that with crystals as well. But there's also this smart buying thing, and many people don't realize when they buy a crystal, this citrine, and I'm sure you've all seen it in the shops, and I'm sure you've all seen it for sale. It's beautiful golden. This is the image that's on the left-hand side. That's actually heated amethyst. That is not citrine. That's, you may as well say somebody's got beautiful purple amethyst, shoved it in a fire, exposed it to heat, so that it gets these burn, rustic looks about it. Right? Pure citrine or good citrine is actually like the image in the middle. It is, in the best case, it is clear and yellow, probably even a bit like glass. So that's another thing there, that because they can make synthetic crystals these days, it probably would be very difficult to tell whether or not um, a clear citrine, which has got this lovely lemony colour to it, whether or not it's fabricated or if it's a genuine article these days. But if you can get a good cluster, I mean, you can see here, actually, I can't show you the pointer, but okay, so if we're looking at that central image and we look down on the right, we can actually see what is part of the geode. That's the bed that the crystal was growing on. I definitely will do a video on crystals at some point in the future. So to me, the central image here appears to be a genuine cluster of citrine of different hues of lemon. So the ones that are at the top, they're a little bit more clear. They've got a little bit more depth of yellow at different parts of the cluster. Smoky citrine, I think, which is the image on the right, I think my gut instinct would be that I'm looking at a genuine article there because it's got the natural flaws inside of it. But they can reproduce these things synthetically these days as well. So the best tip for buying crystals is actually to hold them in your hand. And if you buy online, there's always a risk associated with buying crystals. Anyway, moving on. So, my friends, I guess that's it for me today. I'll probably put some more strategies up in the future, but for right now, these are just some ideas for you to practice and think about. Just remember this big reminder: when we do things the first time, often it is more difficult, but it's practice makes perfect and it simplifies it. I'm not particularly well coordinated, and I did find that the breathing like a tree exercise was a bit difficult to start with. But after a while, as I said, I was able to knock it down in a few minutes. And in fact, you could do it in less than 2 minutes. Right. The other thing is that while physical activity is a great way to reinforce the mind once your visualization abilities are in, you can just imagine yourself doing it. You don't actually have to get up and do it, and you'll still feel the benefits. So for now, my friends, I'm going to leave you with this. I'll catch you on the next video, and I'll let you get some practice. Thank you very much for being with me. Take care. See you next time.